2021, October 8, time 1608. Modification review of the AdirPro bipod. So to make this device usable, I contacted a local metal market and I purchased a piece of aluminum 1/8" bar stock. Specifically what I got was 1/8" by 2" by 8 inches. So 8 inches long, 2 inches across, 1/8" thickness. It costs $5. They just rounded up to the pound, which no objection to that because it, has to pay for their time. I asked them to grind down the edges to smooth it out so it wouldn't grind into the fiberglass that we have here. And then with some sandpaper, first some sandpaper and then a file, I ground down the powder coat on the surface it would contact with. First with sandpaper, I got most of it, which is good enough. And then I roughened up first I measured off the center 3/4 of an inch, which is how wide this is here. So that's the bonding surface. So I marked that off. I roughened it up on the aluminum with some, I think it's 100 sandpaper, 80 grit, fairly rough sandpaper. Got rid of the powder coat on there. And then with the tip of the file and the edge, I basically cut in very shallow grooves in a crosshatch to give more bonding surface for the epoxy I was going to use. I did some research to find out, is there any epoxy that would be best for aluminum bonding? There didn't seem to be any special product that was exceptional just for aluminum to aluminum. Original JB Weld seemed to be very high on some testing that I looked into on the YouTube channel Project Farm. He does some very good scientific testing on different products. So I just went with JB Weld. Also, I already had that, so it was pretty easy to use. After sanding and then cutting some crosshatch pattern grooves and cleaning it with alcohol to remove any oils or whatever, I mixed up some JB Weld, which this may not work out because I think I've had this for maybe 10 years. And JB Weld is supposed to look, you can see like a little drip of it there. Focus. You see it's kind of a brown color. It's supposed to be a dark gray. So after looking that up, JB Weld, like most chemical compounds, can age and can go bad. So we'll find out after use if that's a serious issue. But I've pried at this after letting it cure for not quite 24 hours. It's been, when I tested it, maybe 22 hours, and the instructions on here say 15 for full cure. So that should be good. Again, you still have to use this or something else to tie it in place to make it work, but this makes a much wider surface contact, so you're not having right there be a fulcrum point against the fiberglass. It still is for the aluminum stock, but with the epoxy bonds, that should be good. I will note that it does significantly increase the weight you're going to carry around. Let's put that back. So I would not recommend using this setup just in general constantly. I don't think it's going to be worth it for most time. It's mostly just if you have a situation where you can't get it to stand on its own, then you would have this set up to deal with that. But most likely for 90% of our work, given the carried weight, you're just going to want to use the bare rod. As long as you can make that work, use it without this. And then if you want to have this as a backup for the however many percent of situations that require it, you would have that. But yeah, I don't think you want to use this constantly. Again, depending on where you are, if there's a lot of wind where you are, or the time of year you're doing surveying, that might change, and it might be worth it just to leave it attached and carry the little extra weight. Comments for doing this process. Find out what clamp you're going to need ahead of time. This is what worked for me. It's a Irwin QuickGrip. Let's see, it has the size on it somewhere. Oh, there's the number on it, but you know, just a flexible clamp. The reason I like this, focus, is the clamp head will rotate. Because you don't have a very good surface back here, it's all at right angles. So it kind of had to go at an angle and stick here to clamp onto the aluminum stock here. Next, I set it down originally, you know, just on some paper in case the epoxy dripped so it wouldn't get on the floor. I made the mistake of having this side down. So the aluminum was resting on the bonding surface, even with the clamp. That's not something you should do if you're doing this. The reason is, you can see in there a little of the epoxy dripped in. You can kind of see it in there. And some of it got into that joint. Fortunately, with the compression that hinge is under, it didn't get really inside the hinge. And I noticed it in time before it had fully cured to clean it up as good as possible. So the hinge still works. It's maybe even a little tighter than it was before, but it's still functional, so I didn't totally fuck up the device. But yeah, if you're doing this, you want this side facing up when you let the epoxy cure, so as to not make the same mistake I did. Beyond that, the aluminum here is pretty smooth. The one other mod I can think of is you can use some double-sided tape and probably a tool bed liner. Some of that tacky, grippy, diamond pattern plastic, soft plastic that you use to line the bottom of your tool beds or your tool drawers. You could double-sided tape on that just to give it some tacky grip to hold on to this. But not necessary, not strictly. This is usable. It's not perfect, but it is now usable, whereas before it was definitely not. Yeah, I believe that's it.